So, Darren, it doesn't exist according to Dawn.
Well, I wish that were true. I wish that were true. Honestly, if you could see my emails and the tweets I get on a daily basis calling for my head. And whenever I appear on the BBC or Sky News, people say, how dare you have this Nazi on our channels, etc., etc. I think in 2020, it's amazing that Conservatives are now the real rebels. We are rebellious. We are viewed as, despite the fact that the public keep voting for Conservative parties, despite the fact that the public overwhelmingly agree with Conservative mainstream opinion, we are viewed as outliers. And that's because there is a dominant culture on everything from the media, the mainstream media, our education system. These cultural gatekeepers are dominated by the left. So, of course, any opinion, we've just seen that fantastic New York Times resignation just today, actually.
Yeah, so explain that, Darren. Explain what's happened there.
So, so there's been a resignation today by one columnist who is a centrist, whose name I actually can't remember off the top of my head right now, who is a centrist columnist, and she has just had to resign because she finds that every single person at the New York Times, anything that she puts out there is scrutinized from the lens of her somehow going against the grain. And that is centrist, mainstream thought and opinion. All she has done wrong is tried to put forward more diversity of thought and of opinion. So I disagree with, I think Dawn's very reasonable, but on this, I massively disagree with you. I think we are getting to a point now where free speech and debate is under attack like never before.
Yes, it was Barry Weiss who did that, and you sent me the article earlier, Darren, and within it she actually said op-eds that would have easily been published just 2 years ago would now get an editor or a writer in serious trouble, if not fired. Dawn Foster, if that's not an example of the cancel culture in practice, I don't know what is.
I can't think of a single example of, of anybody being fired for writing a column. I mean, if you have written a column, it's gone through an editor. If it's so serious that somebody has to be fired for it, then surely it's the editor, not the writer, that should be fired.
Yeah,
but we've seen that happen at the New York Times.
Barry Weiss will be. She wasn't. Barry Weiss wasn't fired. She
but her old boss
will be moving on to something else.
Yes, the editors, yeah.
But Dawn, the wider point, and I think Ricky Gervais made this point perfectly on TV Kevin O'Sullivan's brilliant talk radio show at the weekend, where he said, if you are even slightly right-wing now, even slightly right-wing, even for someone like me that's sort of centre-right, you are compared, exactly, Darren, you are compared to Hitler on Twitter because there is just no plurality of thought, Dawn.
I mean, for years and years and years, whenever I've gone on TV, or radio, just like Darren, I've had huge amounts of abuse. I've had to set up certain filters in my emails because I get so much abuse. So I think it does come from both sides.
Yeah, no, it does. I think, abuse does come from both sides. But I think, Darren, that I completely agree with Dawn on that. I think everyone gets trolled. But there's a huge difference, Darren, between a trolling culture, which, by the way, I think is despicable, and I think Twitter is a cesspit and they need to sort it out. But there's a difference between that and a cancellation culture. And the cancellation culture is all about someone expresses a view. For example, Darren Grimes expresses a view, and then you have organised campaigns run on social media targeting your employers, your advertisers, saying, we will boycott you unless you sack such and such a person. And those campaigns, Darren, are only run by the left.
And you only have to look at our universities for fantastic examples of that. To be a Conservative student requires balls of steel. I mean, no platforming at our universities is a regular occurrence. Our so-called world-class universities, I get contacted by several students every single week telling me tales of it being almost impossible to secure venue bookings to host democratically elected MPs with centre-right views. Imagine that. Just imagine, those who represent our country aren't able to engage in discussion with our nation's young people, because like clockwork, the invitation's issued, it's then accepted, a venue secured, and then like clockwork, left-wing students start to apply pressure to the university societies and their diversity teams to work to no platform these MPs.
Well, yes.
It happens time and time again.
You could even say, Dawn, that part of this great statue debate has even seen historical figures who can't defend themselves cancelled hundreds of years later. Is that not an example of the cancellation culture at work, Dawn?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's a case of us rethinking a lot of our history and whether or not we should be venerating people who kept black people as slaves and, killed a lot of them. But I find it really, really interesting how all week, all we've heard is, dozens of people in lots of right-wing newspapers, of which there are far more than left-wing newspapers in the UK, talking over and over again about how silent they are, how cancelled they are. And if that's true, how is it the case that we can hear of nothing else? How is Darren on here now arguing with me?
Because
how are they cancelled?
Because talkRADIO is brilliant, of
talking.
course.
Well, and Darren and Darren is probably quite lucky that he doesn't have to work within the confines of a mainstream media organisation that probably, Darren, I have to be honest with you, probably would have cancelled you.
The
over
BBC
the past
wouldn't touch me
weeks.
with a barge pole. Let's be honest, Dan. I'd be sacked within a week.
Which is totally. Just so outrageous. Now, look, need to get you to weigh in on our question of the day. Should people be fined £100 for refusing to wear a mask in shops, Dawn?
I think only if you are going to do something to actually make it easier for people who can't afford masks to get them. I think that, essentially the government have come in very, very late. They push forward with this and they're trying to, they're basically trying to threaten people. But unless you give people masks, who can't afford it, then you're essentially saying to poorer people that they have to risk being fined because they can't afford to buy masks. I mean, I bought a box from Boots. They cost £15 for about 50. That's quite a lot of outlay for people who've lost their jobs or who have multiple children.
Darren, where do you stand on this?
Well, I've had quite a lot of tweets all day saying, come on, Darren, stop being such a selfish so-and-so. I won't quite put it in the language that they couched it in. But listen, I think I would understand if we'd done this much earlier, right? But with the virus, the prevalence of the virus and that R rate being so low in the UK now, I think we have to start focusing on the tragic repercussions of the massive economic downturn that we've just mentioned and that actually Dawn's just mentioned in what she just said in her remarks there. We've got to start focusing on getting people back into our shops so we can start creating that employment that gets people the salaries that they need. I don't think you're going to do that if you turn people away, because this does risk turn people away. There are those who go to supermarkets, Dan, and actually it's a big part of their social calendar. And when number of new infections is as low as it is, it's totally fallen off a cliff, and thank God it has. But it's going to require them to be worn in these shops, and it's just so utterly dehumanizing. You miss smiles, you miss dialogue and social interaction with staff. I genuinely think these are the most miserable part of the public health initiative yet.
Darren Grimes, founder of Reasons UK, a conservative channel from the right, and Dawn Foster, the journalist at Jacobin magazine from the left, with today's political panel. Thank you so much to both of you.